Welcome
Hi,
to those
Casey.
who just joined us. I see there's Rachel and Curti, so thanks for coming. So when Dana spoke to me about intervening, it was very wide. I was like, okay, what do you want me to talk about? What am I supposed to talk about? And tried to kind of think about the other people that have intervened in the past. And it was very wide open. So what I ended up proposing was really about what kind of path brought me to enterprise architecture. So how did I get here? What kind of influences and guiding principles converge to where and who I am now, and to the banners that I carry? Because I consider that there's certain topics that are really close to my heart that I carry strongly, that are kind of in the end quite related, and then help and like reach out to you, which since we're such a tight audience, then that means we can maybe interact even more, which is great, um, about what that could mean for you and your point of view on the banners that you carry and what you could do with that. So the approach that I've taken in the presentation is kind of in time, a timeline approach. So I'm even starting in childhood, which might sound a bit precipitous, but I think there's a lot of things that are also kind of foundation in the beginning. Then university kind of period and early career, and then now and looking forward. And really, it's just to be able to share this kind of like inspiration, and then how we can kind of lean on these experiences that we have and talents that we have into constructing a meaningful path around a lot of different angles. So we'll dump into it. So just, yes, that's me. That's little me. So we're starting at the beginning. Um, one quote I really like and I apply a lot in my values is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Life is not a journey, or life is the journey and not the destination. Um, so it's not just about where you are or achieving some objective or getting some outcome, or focusing so much on a key moment, which is actually quite passing, but really living fully in the experience as we move forward. So it's kind of like key angles. I wanted to focus in on that. Uh, there's this big debate, philosophical debate about nature versus nurture. So are we is it just this is the way it is? Like we're born who we are and who we're going to be, or the world is as it is and that's how it's going to be. And then there's the angle about our capacity for action and our capacity to generate change. So changing as people, evolving as people, but also that we can have an impact on the world around us. So I've been constantly confronting these notions for most of my life, even as a kid, about what about it is I'm experiencing something and this is just the way it is, or this is just who I am. And also, what do you do with who you are, right? Because, yeah. And how far can I have an impact, a capacity for change on things? So, in this childhood that exposed me a lot to already some foundational principles around here, I highlight connection, diversity, and change. Well, is that in my young childhood, so starting at around age 10, we moved once a year, every year, pretty much, with my mother, and we lived all over the United States. I lived in 12 different states. And I can tell you that Texas is very different from New Jersey, and it's very, very different from Pennsylvania or from Virginia. And so got to see a lot of different facets. And all these moving around exposed to me quite young realization that we're all very much the same. We're all human. There's so many things that connect us as that we have in common, but also the one big thing we have in common is that we're all so special and different. So being exposed to living in a lot of different places, climates, cultures, because it's all the United States, but it's quite different local cultures with their strengths and their weaknesses and their history. I really could already be exposed to quite a bit of diversity. And I also learned the importance of human connection and community. So when you're a young kid starting like middle school, high school, those are hard years. You know, you're trying to construct yourself and who am I going to become? Well, not knowing how long I was going to be at any one place we were living, you just cut right through all the BS and say, try to get down to an authentic connection to the people around you and really live the experience of connecting with the place that you're in now. So it really helped build a sense of mindfulness about living in the now, but also not attaching as much importance to things as to people and experiences. Because with all this traveling around, you didn't fit it all in a small U-Haul van. So we just that kind of stuff didn't matter. But what we were living really mattered. And some of the consistency that was in all that moving around was my two sisters, because I'm the youngest of three kids, but also my mom. And since we are here in a WIA meeting where we're talking about women, I'm going to start with one of the strongest first women influencers in my path, which is my mom, who is she's still not stopped working if she even if she doesn't have to. She's just really passionate about what she does. A researcher, a teacher, and a doctor. And she had an approach of why we're moving around so much is that she was going to places that had a kind of a big mess and a big need and a big problem, and then she would come in with a mission, get things up on rails, get it going. And once things were set up and could run, she said, okay, you got this. And then she could go to the next thing. Not leaving because I leave something that's trouble, but leaving because it's going well. Because she's like, people really need me somewhere else to go and set up solutions around more problems. So a real problem solver, a real active engager, and someone that inspired me quite a bit. So this set a good example of a kind of a strong woman leader. And also, as I was moving around and being exposed to different life situations, I quite quickly learned that when it comes to equality, life isn't fair, but that we can't sit around and wait for it to become fair. Okay, so we do have to try to do what we can with what we have. Then coming back to the nature nurture thing, being the youngest of three, it did kind of because I don't know if you've ever looked into birth order theory. I'm kind of the typical youngest child in the sense of it does help you to be a bit more outgoing and hardworking, persistent, really trying to I guess trying to impress. So those can really be things that have served me. But some of the positive side effects of all this first level of experience was that it helped me to be more agile and adaptable and resilient, and helped me also by the fact that at a certain part in this path, we were living in Louisiana, which is one of the few states in the U.S. that provides in public school access to the French language. So in most public schools, public organization, you don't get access to language very early in the school system. And it's really thanks to that a real passion was inspired for me about the French language, but also then the culture, European history, architecture, philosophy, just like the list could get longer and longer. But all of that passion was born already in middle school just because I was able to have that opportunity. So really seizing opportunities is a great important lesson that I've learned to be open to them and reach out for them. And then another great moment in this kind of youth phase was when I first discovered industrial systems engineering. So my eldest sister was dating a guy, and he went to college already. Well, so he was an older guy, and I thought he was the coolest thing that ever happened. And so I was asking, what do you learn in school? What is it all about? And he told me that he was an ISE major, and he told me what industrial systems engineering was. And I didn't even know that that existed, that there was this you could major in this and that it was like something you could study and learn and then do. And I make direct correlations to industrial systems engineering and enterprise architecture that I'll show you later in the slides. But it was a real light bulb moment, just his 5 minutes description of this. And I was like in my head right away, and pretty quickly after told my parents. I think I must have not even been in high school at the point, still middle school. When I grow up, I want to go live and work in France, and I want to be an industrial systems engineer. And they thought that was really cute for a middle schooler to announce this, but it was really clear to me that that's what I wanted to do. So all this kind of change, constant change, and shifts, but also these experiences really help prepare me for a big structural thing for me personally, which is my decision to set up my life in Europe, which I have done now since 2005. So next step, next step is I went off to school to start to prepare the path of my plan. Okay, so I say I'm going to be a industrial systems engineer and work in France. Well, I decided to do that at Virginia Tech, which is in Virginia. And there I was exposed to some, I guess, frameworks and methods that have stuck with me for life. So I put a couple of examples here and on the next couple slides, and I'm sure that there's multiple that will resonate with you. But clearly the dimming well, which is a systems thinking approach, the the process approaches, so understanding suppliers, input, process, output, and the customer. With regards to how, what are the activities being carried out and what is the information resources that are coming in and coming out for the different actors involved in a certain perimeter, okay? Then you probably recognize the TOGAF ADM wheel, and I was learning also industrial systems engineering about process modeling, about data modeling, but also during these studies, learning to code, learning about lots of different engineering and sciences and math, because I've always loved math, and my French degree, because I had two degrees at the same time. So what was interesting during this phase is, for me, this all made total sense when my engineering mentor and my French mentor still didn't really understand what's the point. Like the French mentor was like, why are you learning engineering in these big amphitheaters of hundreds of people? And you don't exist over there. You're just a number. Why would you do that? And then my engineering mentor, who was fantastic, but would be like, what's with the French? What do you care about that? I mean, why don't you do Chinese or Spanish? Wouldn't that be more business savvy? And I'm like, well, I'm not doing it to be business savvy. I'm doing it because I have a spark of a passion and an interest, and I'm pursuing them. And so I really stuck my guns. But I found also a lot of resonance between even as I moved further in foreign language and what I was learning in my engineering classes, plus what I was learning in my coding classes. So learning a lot of, I just put an example of C++, but I did lots of other languages too. That it's kind of, in all those locations, you've got frameworks and lots of kind of rules, but that are guide rails to understanding how things function. And in the end, to succeed in shared understanding. It's like another language for me. Coding and math and science, all these things are just like structured ways of shared understanding. So I would have loved to learn even more languages and more coding languages and spoken languages and methods and everything, but I certainly had lots of fun doing these things. I don't know if some of these that you know, but um, one of the experiences that I did there at the end of my degree was an internship around where we were participating on research where we leaned on process design but also simulation applied to emergency departments. So it was a really cool mandate where with the team, there was like an organization of different emergency departments actually in the state of Pennsylvania, and they said, well, we want to inject funds so that we have a quicker and a more qualitative treatment time for our the flow in our emergency room. So the patient's the center of their approach. We're ready to inject money, but where should we inject it? More doctors, more nurses, add a floor to the building, more beds, more materials. What do we need to make this optimized? So here it was a really interesting mix between, again, process, but also like spaghetti mapping and operations understanding and things like that to help expose where's the most utility of this effort. So when I take a look at these, when I'm step back and looking at these different things, there's lots of circles, here's this wheel or this lots of arrows and things like that. But in the end, we're just trying to get an understanding of something in a way that we can work together, and in order to get an outcome that's going to be interesting and worthwhile, because we're always in the end going to have elements coming in that we work with, things that we're doing with them, and things that are coming out of them in a certain sphere of space. So again, in this emergency room example, we defined what we considered that system to be. We said, these are the contours of the system. This is what we're going to look at. So we took a simplified view of something complex. And kind of everything that we touch on ever since I even discovered what it even is, systems engineering, has been with this kind of approach of what contour are we going to look at, and then how are we addressing what's going on inside and around that contour. And it can be defined in different ways, and it's us to draw the line. But yeah, to come back onto the ADM cycle wheel, so that's the architecture development method that I'm sure quite a few of you know. So it helps manage, and it's a structured method that's helping to manage the life cycle of enterprise architecture through different phases. So next. This is an example, just to touch a couple more words on industrial systems engineering, which I think is really an important part of foundation as I move forward, which at the time when I was getting this training didn't exist in a lot of at least French degrees. Now it exists in a couple of the Écoles des Mines, but it's not necessarily a focus that kind of multidisciplinary that was present at the time. But it's a kind of engineering where you have multiple engineering disciplines that converge. So it's quite cross-functional, and the objective is to analyze, design, and optimize complex systems where people and engineering and information are going to intersect. So this is why the training was so kind of mixed. So learning aerodynamics, but we're learning chemical engineering and civil engineering, and it's supposed to prepare people who are going to go into the world and do transversal things and work in different kinds of companies where you're pulling people together that are in of different expertises, working with the different expertises for a better overall system. So the whole body. Um, and one of the other, I would say, key points from the kind of educational phase of learning that I took as a takeaway that, again, is very important to me in the things that I do afterwards is life cycle approach, life cycle analysis, life cycle assessment, where you're focusing, you're making an intentional consideration of not just the moment when we do things, but what happened before, and what happens after, and even after, to take a consideration of its full existence, because sometimes we can be very focused just on the using something right now, and maybe developing to use it, but not necessarily how it's maintained in time, how we continue to make sure that it's pertinent, or how do we address when we decommission it. And decommission, we're not just talking about IT, it could be lots of things. So this is life cycle analysis is really applicable to everything. It's just a consideration. It's saying that we bring it into our way of seeing the world. At the very end of my degree, I did an internship with a company called HB Maynard in Pittsburgh that was now since bought by Accenture. And one of the great things that came out of this was a deep dive into lean management. So even though I'd already learned some of these things in school, this consulting firm was a focus on lean management approaches. So those are I mean, I listed some of these here, but they're oriented around efficiency, continuous improvement, productivity, and typically applies to production contexts, but they don't have to. So associated issue would see like Lean Six Sigma, just in time, Toyota, Kanban, Kaizen, these kinds of things. But what really stuck with me were the focus on we want to amplify whatever generates value, identify what is value, amplify what generates value, and remove what they call muda. Muda is the Japanese for waste. So anything that is not bringing value is considered waste. And again, this is typically was born in an industrial context, like assembly lines and things like that, but it's super applicable in any context, personal or professional, in fact. And the thing, though, the reason I didn't keep on doing that for the rest of my life, or specifically with that company, not to say bad things about that company, but the context that we intervened on were all quite industrial and a bit hardcore. Like you're in the plant that's transforming carbon from one format to another, or like breaking down a bunch of, you know, blocks of what are they called? Stone to make. There was one company that just made tombstones, and they just transformed stone into tombstones. It was just you're really into it, you know, the physical transformation of products. But the challenge for me there was that there wasn't the human factor wasn't really considered. So we were doing lots of optimization, and I was having fun from a scientific perspective of workflow design and performance management and reducing setup time and stuff like that. It's cool. But in the end, people were losing their jobs. And I was like, I don't want to use my skills and my energies and my talents now that I've learned to make more money for a company that means lots of workforce reduction approaches. So I was like, no. Plus, as you remember, I wanted to go live and work in France. So if they don't send me to France, then we're not going to stay with this company, right? So we're going to go find other solutions professionally. But to finish on this kind of foundational phase and do a transition to the real big bulk of my professional sphere, I want to make another kind of juxtaposition to talk a bit more about holistic and systemic approaches, which are really present in all the other things that I already said. So uh, here I'm going to compare the body and the company or an enterprise, because enterprise is not necessarily a company. It could be an association or some other organization. And here you have, for example, in the body, it's a complex system that contains subsystems. Like we could say we're only going to look at the nervous system, or we're going to look at the skeletal system. Okay, so there's different subsystems. In the same way that in a house, you've got the electricity system, but you've also got the weight supporting structure system. Okay, so different views of the same overall body, but inside subsystems that work together. So a system approach is a set of interrelated and interdependent parts, but they're arranged in a manner that produces a unified whole. And that's where you get the word holistic from, because the holistic approach is something comprehensive, because it's going to consider all those interconnected parts and emphasize the importance of addressing the underlying causes on the whole system and not just symptoms. So for this, I wanted to share a little anecdote, because one of my sisters ended up marrying a guy whose parents are both surgeons, and they're not just any surgeons, they're obstetric surgeons. So they both have very focused activities of doing surgeons for obstetricians. Okay, and we were at a dinner once where they were talking about how they think it's silly how glorified that they are being surgeons with regards to general practitioners, because they were both like, listen, Leslie, we're like a car mechanic who just opens and always turns the same places to do the same actions. It's quite manual. It's always the same things, and it's not not that saying the body isn't complex, but for them, what's really impressive and complex is the work of a diagnostician or a general practitioner who's treating and carrying the whole person, has to understand the whole body and how they come together, and is not only in an approach of care for the problem, but seeing the human being as a sum of its parts in anticipating its future health. So they were like, why is it that it's that a surgeon, why are we being paid more than a GP? In fact, they have a hard time finding a local GP, because there's not enough of them, because they're not as admired or recognized. And so I think that it's just funny that they could be kind of self-deprecating like that. But I think that sometimes too, inside companies as enterprise architects, it's not necessarily a highly recognized role or understood role, when in fact the enterprise architect is aiming to look at the whole entity of the company and its overall health, and not just right now or managing a problem, but anticipating towards the future how we can continue to maintain that health. And so that's not necessarily always visible and sexy as some other positions in the company that are more like surgeons, really surgical focused, small zone type of expertise. But since an enterprise architect or a systems engineer, they both have more of a widespread coverage. It's you're kind of everywhere, so then you're sometimes a little nowhere. So we have to work sometimes harder to be visible and recognized. So yeah, I just wanted to make this kind of point about health being something comprehensive that requires investment, and the same goes for an organization. And so similarly, transformation success is going to be multifactorial. So you need to consider the different subsystems for the whole system to transform successfully. So to draw a picture of the enterprise, and again, everybody here knows these things, but just put another layer on it. The way I see and the way I understand multiple other people see, and kind of a connected enterprise architecture approach or a holistic view of the enterprise, there's different layers. So there's the business layer of what is the reason to be of the organization? What are the processes that deliver upon that and the value streams? The application layer that is what are the business applications and functions that an information system to answer to what the business is doing and what the business needs to do. And the IT layer is the infrastructure that allows those business applications to operate. So the could be technologies, networks, databases, etc. And then the data layer and data architecture layer is the structure, like what are we vehiculing during our activities in our applications, and what is the structure of that data? So what is the concepts, but also the data structure. And then the layer of risk is operational risks at any of these levels that could prevent us from doing what we're trying to do there. So anything that could be hindering our capacity to realize these different layers in architecture. Now I'm going to move into the real professional phase. So for this is all concerning kind of the beginning of my career at Mega International. So Mega International is a software company and a consulting, and they do consulting services around enterprise architecture and governance, risk, and compliance. And so what I want to expose here is, well, just a little comment on the phrase on the left is something again my mom taught me, is when she said, "Just always leave it better than you found it." So, you've all seen posters when you go into like a public bathroom that say, leave this as you'd like to find it. But her, it's everywhere you go and everything that you do. It should be better because you were there, even if you were only there for a moment, and make sure you're bringing that positive change. And I tried to do that in the different positions that I had in our company, that I wanted to show a little bit here and talk to you about how about boundaries too. So typically when you have a job description, it just kind of says this is what you're going to do, and then that's a given and you're just supposed to do it. But what I observed each time I was in a position is sometimes there were things that I felt that we needed for that to work best. Like in order to do this right, or for the customer to get everything that they need, or for the team to have what they need, or the company to have what they need, I needed something. And if I didn't have that something, I was I just said, okay, well, I'm going to leave it better than I found it. If I'm not getting it, well, then I'll just be a part of making it. So in each of these situations where I started as a consultant solution engineer directly working with customers on their setup of EA projects, but also evolving their EA projects, mostly even if I did some GRC, but mostly it was EA. And then over time became more of a project manager working with teams who doing that, but like leading the teams and helping them grow, but also securing the projects. And then afterwards, as a service director, so responsible for the consulting teams for firstly just the French region, then Africa, Middle East as well, and then the DACH regions. So in charge of people who are going to do projects and helping pre-scope projects for customers before we intervene on them. But in each of those situations, before I was evolving, it was that I was kind of bleeding over the edge of my boundary. So not just doing what I was told, but reaching a bit further out. Um, and I would make an analogy with, for example, if you've got two neighboring countries and you've got a border that's on a river, okay? Well, that river is going to have a good health if both of those countries care about it because they're kind of both overlapping and being careful about how that's yeah, how it's being cared for. So I didn't really stay inside my sphere or inside my boundary. I would be reaching out so that that would be more successful, so that the what they was being asked to do would work better. And so that's why I talk here about entrepreneurship. I think a key important factor as we progress, especially but also personally, is not waiting for other people to give you the solutions, not just saying, this is the way it is, but saying, what can I do? Can we do something about it? And what can we do about it? So that's going back to kind of nature nurture thing. But I also recognize that a lot of this progression was not, how can I say, uh, like I think in each of these promotions, I didn't ask for them. I had a boss or a mentor who said, don't you think it's time that you asked for a promotion? Don't you think you're ready to do this? Don't you think you're already doing that and you just don't have the name tag because you've already started taking on these activities? You just aren't getting recognized for it. So I'm fully aware that a part of a successful path isn't just the person who's doing it, but having people who are looking out for you. So I see that it's super important to have that others believed in me when I didn't, or push me a little to, like, even say, don't you think you need a raise? I'm like, oh, I can't ask for a raise. Okay. So I know that this isn't the norm, and I just see how important it is to have a support system and mentorship and people pulling you up, especially in the phases at the beginning where you're not necessarily going to advocate for yourself. So now that I'm moved forward in time, I put a lot of importance of paying attention to, so what I learned from that is paying attention to other people to help them advocate for themselves and advocating for them and helping and still show that I have confidence in them because they're still sometimes lacking it in themselves. And you need to be reminded of it all the time because it's easy to forget it. And even now, 42 years old, sometimes I forget to be confident in myself and be like, ooh, imposter syndrome attack. And then I'm like, wait, I've been doing this for 20 so years. I can stop being worried about that. But I think all of us sometimes fall back into that. So the just making a remark on that. Another thing I think that it was a kind of a key success factor or particularity is that during all this time, so I was working in this company that was a very small human-sized company. Everybody knows their name. I mean, we all knew each other, even if it's internationally present. It's just maybe like 300 people. So it was easier to evolve because, for example, each time I was moving up in the ranks, everybody around me already knew me, so the recognition was easier. Okay, recognition, yes, but sometimes repositioning tricky because when I was a consultant, other directors, I was there kind of to serve them, there to serve the customers, there to serve my directors and follow their leadership. But then when I moved up and I was a director beside them, it wasn't an easy adjustment for me to start behaving like someone who also deserves respect and that the voice is just as strong as those beside me because I was so used to being in a position of a not servitude but service. So once you're in a role of leadership, I did appreciate respect of my peers, but it was a really big adjustment to make, especially with colleagues where I was maybe younger than them, or that they had a different view of how a young woman behaves. So when I had an opinion or we disagreed, it sometimes tricky because I never ruffled feathers when I was a young consultant. I would just say, yes, sir. How jump, how high? So I also find that one of the things that helped this progression was not adopting a "that's not my job" kind of point of view. So again, if things should be done and no one's doing it, observing that and saying, okay, how can we address this and what can I do so that we can get this done, and involving people as much as we can, but just not letting it be just because it's not on paper something that's my problem. Um, Something I think that was also helpful in this whole branch, so this whole vertical branch I'm showing here was in services. So in this kind of services part of the company, is that there were three main values that were promoted, which is the customer, but also the team and the company. So just that your customer, you're making your customer happy, that's like, well, good, you're doing your job. But if you're really a good team player, means that you're helping your colleagues also help their customers, and you're following with interest what's how the EA space is evolving, how your company's evolving with it, how our products are evolving with it. So engaged in a company initiative. And I really appreciated that that there's value put on that, that it wasn't just only customer satisfaction, but that it was more customer success, which is not the same thing, and team success and company success. Because for that particular nuance, um, I think when a lot of us start out, we're looking for satisfaction. We want to please. And I think also as a woman, we're expected to want to please. And pleasing is not necessarily what's best for us, but also for the person on the other side, or the company or the organization or whatever on the other side. And I had to learn with time, in these roles and services, that sometimes saying, actually, what you've asked for, I don't recommend that. I recommend something else, and this is why. That we're, in services, we're there as a counsel, so we're being asked to provide the right counsel, which it also means saying no, but smartly, and providing, advice, our advisory services for the objective of their true success. And the customer cannot listen to that if they choose not to, but we're required to do so. So it was a real interesting learning shift to understand the difference between satisfaction and success, and what a role is as an external party working with these companies. So this whole path, I'm doing things for other companies to do things, right? And that's going to differentiate from the later part of the path that I'll get to. I have to speed up. I see, since we started late and it's already 48, so I'll speed up. We're going to go to a personal side. We're flipping over. We're out of the professional sphere. We're into the personal side, because also one of the angles I wanted to achieve in our discussion today is how the personal and the professional can kind of bleed over onto each other and then merge together to make sense. So again, I had no idea I was going so slowly, so I'll speed up. Um, Over my last 20 years, I guess, in France, I've had a growing interest in reducing my environmental impact, and having also a positive impact on human beings and the planet. And as I grew my family, so these are my three kids, but since this picture, they've gotten older. My son's now 13 and the youngest is 7. But I just think this is a super cute picture because they're all hair tousled in our tent at a campsite and everything. Um, and so I wanted to touch a couple words here, is that as our family grew, we even went further in our zero waste approaches at home and our investment in circular economy. So we really try to apply the 5 R's of zero waste at home to be reducing as little, being focused on value and removing the muda. Okay, so I literally applied when I learned about lean management in my internship. I was like, my life should be like this. Why would I have things that I don't need? Why would I do things that I don't need? So I became kind of voluntarily minimalist, and simplifying and focusing on quality and not quantity. and really focusing on what's essential and regularly re-questioning what I consider essential. So in these main principles, what's going to be involved around that is lots of sharing and not owning. So having as much if there's things that we want in our lives, that they be things that we're sharing with other individuals as opposed to belonging. And when we do own things and we don't need them anymore, can we find another use for them, give them away, exchange them, or sometimes sell them? But I hardly ever do that because it's just a bunch of work that I don't need to take. For things that we do consume purposefully, reducing packaging, prioritizing recyclable materials, and just using us as our role as a consumer to apply values that we have around, uh, yeah, there we go. So mutualization of resources, uh, reinforcing the kind of taking care and appreciating what you have as a caretaker and a steward. So trying to instill that into our kids. I put down here two references that are fun, and they're some of the first books I ever read, maybe 15 years ago, around these things that were real great inspirations. One is by Bea Johnson, around Zero Waste Home, who was also someone who'd lived in the United States and in France, so I could relate to also her learnings, and Marie Kondo, who has a method around what do we keep versus what we don't keep, and what's the point of things that we might want to have. So super fun reads if you want. Um, but other things that have come out of this that have been great is that also with this approach, with the zero waste approach, you're focusing more again on people, mindfulness, experience, even and enjoying the journey and not just the destination. So we don't buy a cake at the store, we make a cake and we make a cake together and it's an activity and then we're creating together. My kid wanted a Playmobil castle. We built the castle. It took us 2 months instead of 5 minutes at the toy store, but we really loved it and we played with it with all three kids and it was a fantastic project. So it's the pleasure of being a part of the process and not just getting the result. So in behind that, there's lots of do-it-yourself. So, I mean, I could give you tons of tips on lots of homemade kind of approaches for cosmetics, for house cleaning. I mean, it's really fun. I think it's super fun, but it also lets us could reconnect with nature, connect with our community because there's a lot of learnings there, and feel that there's a nice health benefits, sense of authenticity. It's also good for the environment, good for local business. So we got a lot out of this as a family. And on related to that, me and my husband are co-founders of an associative grocery, so it's like a co-op, because we wanted also through as a consumer to do more farm to table, encourage small businesses locally, increase the quantity of what we ate that it was organic and local, just really have a lower carbon footprint on these practices. And so in this association, where our three main values are ecology, solidarity, and participation, it's the people inside the association members are the ones who run it. So it's like a little grocery store, but only for the people in the association. We've got about 150 members and quite a large turnover of items in our grocery store, I guess. I mean, it's like a little grocery store. So it's been a really fun personal project, but also connected to that, there's a lot, we were re-insisting on this importance of connection to our community, human connection, because we wanted it to be a vector for sharing. So people inside the association teaching others about gardening and other solidarity initiatives that are going on in the region. So there's just lots of animations, shared knowledge, conferences, debates that are related to those principles. And so it's brought us a nice sense of connection and community. So you can like, what's the point of all this? But I'm getting there. Um, but in these learnings that are in the personal sphere, I just really got a lot of passion around the topic of sustainability and started reading up and learning more about that in a more structured way. So starting with just personal experience and then wanting to expand that. And so here another quote from Einstein that I've always really liked too is that everything is connected, which I do believe too. So you can't act on one piece without affecting another piece. And sustainability is going to articulate three main pieces, which is society and human beings and people and peoples, and the environment and economy. And so sustainability is the practice of intentionally, being attentive to using resources responsibly so that they can support present and future needs. So it's really expressing that principle that I say the notion of time is that future generations should live in a world that present generation has enjoyed but not diminished. And in alignment with that, it's associated to a model shift where we're not only focusing on performance like a Ford assembly line which is sending out the next Model T as fast as we can or whatever, but more robustness. So that we're looking as human beings to be more robust, companies to be more robust, which means we last longer, we have more resilience, overall health, which is again something that requires looking forward and not just right now. We're no longer in a situation with all the different disruptions and fluctuations going on in all the different spheres, and more so over the last years, that would allow ourselves to do blind performance-based approaches. Okay, so I really like the balance of sustainability. I was really attracted to it too, I think, because as a person passionate about systems approaches, it's a super example of a systemic approach, right? So what happened is then there was COVID. And during COVID in France, there was forced lockdown. So lots of people were at home a lot, and then lots of people had a lot of time to say, what I want to do with my life. What am I doing next? And I was not an exception to that because it fell right about a time when I'd reached my service director role. I'd been in that branch of services a long time. I was passionate about sustainability. I was like, what am I going to do? Should I go work for a company who's, driving sustainability? Should I go, what should I do with all this? Okay. And so I did a little sit down and I have a paper that looks something like what I'm going to show on the screen, but I just represented it. I represented here in a PowerPoint where I just wrote down what are some really big themes for me that are motivators and drivers that I'm like, this matters to me. And how can I bridge that to my professional sphere so that I can have more impact and scale? Because at home, in a month, my whole family of five, we have a trash can about this big. Bravo me. But did I save the world doing that? I don't think so. Okay. So I've said, if I can go to my professional sphere with 300 people in my job, and if we have a company of 300 people who are aware and doing things, that's more than my family of five. If our company can be an example or helping others through enterprise architecture and GRC and risk avoidance and supporting resilience, if we can help our clients, thousands of clients in the world, to organize not towards performance but towards resilience, to have more sustainable approaches, there the impact is higher. So I was like, this is what I have to do. I have to find ways to bridge these values into my workspace to generate this sense of coherence that I've vectored out here and make more impact because that's what's going to drive me as I move forward. Let's go. So main things that I put down is reducing waste, focusing on what's essential, reducing our environmental footprint, being a vector of positive impact for participative approaches and communities, considering full life cycles, and pushing for what will allow to include maximum amount of stakeholders, people, involvement, and sharing. So what I got to with the workspace were some of these things. So at work, we're a software editor, we're services providers. What can we do more on green IT and eco-conception? Can we get a better picture of our carbon footprint and reduce it? How can we reduce waste and on energy, but also managing our waste? How can we assure sustainable procurement? Can we put in place more governance and indicators around these aspects, but not only? Can we break down some silos? And even if it's a small organization, we still have a lot of kind of every department for his own. How can we work more together and have a domain product focused business lines. How can we share our knowledge more smart, more collectively? People working together, the team, the company, and not, again, every man for himself or small teams with each other. And how can, in that sharing approaches, we improve our competencies and use that in how we address learning? So light bulb moment. And then I go to our current CEO of the time and say, we need to do these things. And to do these things, I want a mandate. Can we do it? And hot diggity dog, I was lucky because he's like, of course, this makes sense. Let's do it. Um, really lucky that I could be listened to, that I have a platform that I can just go talk to this person, and that they said, okay, we'll create some job positions for you. So I became at that point a CSR ambassador for the company. We founded a sustainability committee to involve a key leader in every single activity of the company to come together and start setting up all these elements in these projects and the governance behind it. Also became a corporate services director, so leading services for the whole company worldwide, but uh, to carry transversal missions that are going to determine what are the methodologies that we want to apply. How do we assure that the method that was put into our tool, that we say this is how it should be done, what's actually happening on the field, and that we can loop back, like creating feedback loops, and managing what are the different skills that we expect our customers to have because they use the tool or thanks to the tool that internally we need to help our customers to succeed, and how we're covering those. So it really had a lot of implications in changing the organization, also the practices and the considerations. And on this eco-conception aspect, just say a couple more words about that, is that it's an approach that is trying to consider the human and the environmental aspects through the full life cycle of a product or a service. So you can eco design a chair, you can eco design an information service, you can eco design a laptop, you can eco design anything really. But it's you're saying I'm not just caring about what happens while the person uses this, consumes it, but how is it conceived in advance? How was it manufactured? How are we handling its end of life? And that it's as reusable and as the longest life possible, because we're trying to get a good return on investment of the fact that we used efforts to create it and use it. So that's something that then our company took on strongly. So over multiple years, the research and development teams very mobilized around these. And so I just wanted to share some principles. Darn it, I was very ambitious with my slides today. Hold on. Up. I'll try to go quicker on this piece. So yeah, eco-conception is applies guiding principles on to participate to achieve resilience in different ways. So it can be methods in how you're conceiving the tool itself, but also its architectural of the tool. So when we come back to the example when I was talking about in the zero waste family, where we share things instead of owning them, it's the same goes here. So when you're having multiple instances to share a machine or multiple sessions to share a process, there you're sharing. When taking modular approaches, integration capacities with lighter weight connectors, like REST APIs and GraphQLs. So you're allowing for different systems to connect in a more lightweight that uses less, we're trying to use less processor, less energy, less network, because all of these different pieces have impact. When it comes to the human, it's having a frugal approach and a lean approach to the user experience. So again, only what's essential and not what's not essential, and maybe sometimes what's less essential can be an option, but um, allowing it's more accessible for a user to come into something where it has been designed with them in mind. Another example is and again, helping users adapt to new ways of working is you don't have to have everything fresh all the time. Just having a button of refresh on demand means that we're not refreshing constantly, and so the software is lighter. So for an enterprise architecture tool, which is quite complex, our enterprise architecture tool manages a lot of use cases, so it can be quite complex. These were important things to address. So also agility in the working organization, and one of the main challenges on eco-conception for a software editor that's been around like 30 years, like ours, is that in trying to revolutionize these things and modernize to take these approaches to still be performant and efficient, but um, also answer to these different objectives. We're not starting from scratch in some green field. We have existing software that's been growing over time. So for the transformation of that software, there's quite a bit of inertia. So we took an incremental approach. Um, Again, I didn't do this personally. This is a collective thing of the R&D department and a lot of people mobilized around this topic. And so uh, what you have to do is kind of pick a perimeter, like encapsulate a part that you're going to transform, and then replace that component, like make it modularized, replace that with the modern one. And so there's reducing impacts on things around them. So this progressive kind of approach of evolution is called a strangler pattern. That's when you're doing this encapsulation and replacement. It means it's just not overnight that you've done the revolution. So it's taking time with our software, but we're really enjoying the process. I could say a lot more about this, but I'm going to have to move to the next thing. So thanks to all that, we were able to get an organization put in place now. I think it's for 5 years in a row. We have our carbon footprint for all three scopes for the company, put in place policies and reporting around sustainability, including procurement and recognition from evaluators, from obtaining labels around sustainable IT. Because it's really, if I just feel like if we're in the digital sphere, it's almost like our responsibility to be digitally responsible and to proactively set an example about, again, eco design and green IT, which I didn't even really tell you more about green IT, but we don't have time for that. But not inventing the wheel, leaning on guiding frameworks. And a lot of the approach to sustainability resonates with different systemic approaches that are taken in enterprise architecture as well. And the process over the last years of living the sustainability transformation, which is still ongoing, is a fascinating experience of transforming in the company because all those first 15 years of my profession where I was serving other clients in their transformations, then I was getting to do it to our own company, which is really empowering because I care about our company. I'm really attached to it. I'm very loyal, and I wanted to see it be a better version of itself. So I was thankful that I could be a part of accompanying that change, which means it's also possible, which is great too. And then on the angle of where I was talking about the other topic, which is more like global services vision, methodology, knowledge sharing, and things, we're able to set up a system of knowledge management, playbooks about delivery, domain expertise structure, that everything that is structured around our domains. So the first step is we are here to do what? So what do we do? And then behind the what do we do, having key representatives and then capitalize on people's knowledge through different vectors, a community that we animate, internal forums and workshops. So it's really brought the teams together and generated a lot of positive results for internally, but also for the customers. So where do we stand now? Well, end of last year, financial investors purchased one of our competitors and then purchased us and then purchased another one of our competitors. And now we're a merged company, a biz design company. So we're much larger physically when it comes to number of people, but also in a very key transformation period. So the current main challenges that we face are what was in place before, how can we scale it up and over to 4 products, to 3 companies, which is now 1 company, accompanying the transformation of the, the company, so post-merger things, the company, but also the products to reflect the new domains, the new needs, and how to really help carry these things over. So it's what does this mean with regards to what was built? So we built, for example, there's different angles. What had we done in sustainability? What had we done on this transversal involvement, knowledge management, and integration? We'd achieved things, like I just showed you, these great achievements, but now that was for another subset of people, subset of products, and subset of organization. So now we got to do a carbon footprint for the whole big company. Got to establish our policies for the whole big company. What's the new committee going to look like making the decisions about the sustainability of the company? How are we going to share knowledge now over all of these products, all of these different use cases, repositioning? So it's a real scale up and out that is not a given. It's not just automatically things are going to sprawl out how we like, because other new colleagues, they had ways of addressing these things or choosing to not address them. Their priorities, their way of working, um, that we're going to pull in these new people. From a personal perspective, also, since all this previous evolution was in a context of we all already know each other, recognition was easy. Here, overnight, hundreds and hundreds of people that don't know who I am, that don't know what these things are, so not necessarily aware or had experienced the evolution of them coming to be important or a part of our company values. So when it comes to, also, I put an example here about what's still a challenge and an opportunity is setting the example. I find that an ongoing challenge, because I'm supposed to be this empowered woman who's confident, who always has the answers and stuff. But I admit sometimes I fall into trying to be what one would expect from a woman, which is likable and not bother people and not talk too much or too loud and make everybody happy and just be nice. So this is sometimes not easy to push back against. And remember that I don't have to be that way. And I'd say another setting example that's sometimes hard to do for me is, especially when things get significant, like we're in a very significant moment of change, which is really exciting and positive and potentially fantastically interesting result. But because it's a really important moment, I tend to have a bad habit of working too hard, which is not sustainable. So I talk the talk, but I need to walk the walk. I wonder if sometimes also as a woman, I feel you want to prove something. I don't know. So yes, for ownership, but no to taking on excessive responsibility and compensation of others. So I find that, especially in moments of lots of shift, new organization is, we don't know who does something. So I'm like, ooh, if nobody's doing that, maybe I should be doing that. I'm just sharing with you, kind of exposing my humility around these aspects, which are going to be significantly different for us as we move forward. And amongst those is one of my new mandates. So it's kind of like my corporate service director role before, but now it's for, again, company-wide, is to really build this center of excellence around knowledge and capitalization, and continue to drive these internal transversal projects to secure the customer experience. So like what I was doing before just for Mega, but now for the full company, again, for products and internationally. But that includes, it's kind of like doing enterprise architecture for the company itself, in the sense that we need to manage our redefining our domains and our business glossary and how that relates back to strategy and positioning. What are the competencies? How do we organize our knowledge to have all that we need, and that our employees have what they need, and that our customers have what they need. And this includes to respecting compliance, running our own cyber resilience internally, our own IT portfolio management internally, of course, collaborating with IT and legal and product ownership and things like that. But now it's with a scale of a lot of people that I don't already have a working relationship with, and systems that I'm discovering, and products that I'm discovering. So it's a lot of interesting opportunity. And last notion that I wanted to leave you with before kind of asking for your feedback is something that I discovered a couple years ago that I thought was pretty awesome. It's a Japanese notion called ikigai, and it's pretty much saying that for somebody, you've got things that you love, there's things that you're really good at, there's things that you could be paid to do, and there's things that the world needs. And ideally, you can find a professional orientation that is crossing the intersection of these four things, and that would be your ikigai. And if you can only cross some, well, then you might have say, okay, here I can make a career with this, or this could be a passion, or this could be a mission. So I'm thankful that these different elements, from even young childhood to studies that because I met the right people at the right time and knew those studies exist and I could follow them, um, the right amount of the right kind of mentorship and advocacy from people when I didn't have that confidence myself. Being in a safe space, having done most of my professional career in a company where I was just respected and recognized and encouraged and supported, which isn't always how it is in companies, you know, and having those opportunities. Well, I was lucky enough to be in an ikigai. I guess I consider that that's where I am. And so I would encourage you too to take a step back at the things that are really drivers for you, but also that make you feel like that you believe are useful and that you might be good at, because I'm sure you're good at a lot of things, but it's just like how do you put them all together and find this crossroads um, in how you evolve professionally. So I was interested in how those that are still with us, because I really ran over, and how some of the lessons learned resonate with you from your experiences. And so uh, how do you feel that your experiences and talents and values come together to form a path for you to also, I guess, serve a greater good? So I kind of put back here the main points, which is the mindfulness of enjoying the path, the persistence that's necessary, because it's not that we build something that it's done. So the example again that when we had a lot of achievements on sustainability and on knowledge management, but that doesn't mean we don't have to keep fighting to keep it running and successful and is adjusting with change. Like now a merged company, it's not all to rebuild, but it's practically rebuilding when it comes to the scale, um, the notion of leaving it better than you found it, and how we can be solution makers, and actively participating in our capacity for action, and the connectivity and systemic view of the way we, I guess, see the world and how we apply architecture. And one quote that I just added at the end because I'm rewatching all the season of Lost with my kids and it's fun, is they say often live together, die alone, with the people that are lost on the island, and just the importance that each of the successes that I've observed was because individual is driving, but also the collective is participating in driving. I don't think it's not possible by yourself, and it's not possible just some decision by in a collective, but there's that the individuals aren't on board. So you need kind of both to come together. Um, so any questions or remarks?
Well, thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's I mean, this is the first time I've ever joined a webinar. One of the Women in Architecture events. I'm actually sort of myself. I'm 12 months into having become an assistant business architect,
Mhm.
sort of 12 months ago. And a lot of what you said here does really resonate with me. I think I can see some parallels with um, some of certainly like the systemic thinking, systems thinking, and all of that. I see lots of parallels with that in terms of and business architecture.
Mm.
So I don't know whether my path has been so yeah, it's been a bit sort of stop starty. I mean, I've been yeah, I've tried various things, but I never really ever found myself
Hmm.
um, in. I've, I just was always finding myself in situations in companies where there's too much solutionizing and not enough like looking and trying to understand the problem and the big picture, and we can just do this. If we do this, this will all work. And I found myself in my career working in companies that have that kind of culture
Hmm.
and that way of approaching things. And I'm totally with you. Sorry, I haven't got my camera on because I'm sitting in my car at a service station.
Oh.
I was on my way home from the office, and I had to sort of pull off. This meeting was put in after I'd sort of wanted to join this webinar. So yes, I'm just sitting in my car at the service station at the moment. So I'm in the UK.
Okay.
Um, and so this I don't feel that my career path has been a steady one. It's been right, okay, yeah, still don't feel right in this area, trying something new. And I found myself in business architecture, and I do think that this is a place where I've got my ikigai, because I think it does sort of, it's an approach that does look to understanding things from the bigger picture, understanding what the problems are from the perspective of capabilities, business capabilities. And I just think this is the right approach. Currently, I work in the water industry in the UK,
Okay.
and where we are at the moment in the business is that we are trying to um, sort of mature a business architecture. In some respects, we don't have value streams set out in the business, so we're in that place where we've got some capabilities, but we need to improve them. I'm a member
Hmm.
of the Business Architecture Guild, so we use the Business Architecture Guild methodologies, frameworks, and that's what we're trying to apply and grow in our own business. So I think it's a challenge to actually socialize that within the business and get people thinking in that way. That's kind of where I am. But
Well, awesome and congrats. First of all, just connecting to a meeting when you're in your car. You're really motivated to be in the meeting. So awesome. Thank you. I can tell you that so if it's your first meeting, other meetings don't necessarily have this time scale. I started really late and then it was I was afraid. I was like, I'm not going to have enough slides for 45 minutes and I took a full hour. Because I wanted to say a lot of things because there's a lot of things that feel important to me. But I'm glad for you that you're now in a place where you can have the reach that you're seeking. I think that it's really motivating and satisfying when you can be allowed to feel like you're doing something with a bit more impact and purpose. And I totally understand what you're saying about that kind of short-term vision solutionizing, that is unfortunate because it isn't gonna nurture long-term resilience of short-term solutions. It's a kind of a quick and dirty way of thinking. And I think the business architecture layer of enterprise architecture is key to being sure that we're really connecting back up to the reason to be of the organization in all that we do. Like we're here to do what, and then how are we going to get organized around doing it? And I think that sometimes there can be a focus to put the blinders on where it's just only looking at IT optimization or only, looking at one piece, which is why I enjoy the holistic approach because I feel like it's going to be really caring more comprehensively for what we're doing. So totally
yeah,
resonate with everything you said there. Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks. Um,
Can
did
I,
anybody else have questions? Yeah, hey Linda.
well, I have just a comment for you, Leslie, and then also possibly some kind of a comment to the prior comment, I guess. But so Leslie,
Yes, ma'am.
fantastic
Thank you.
survey
Okay.
of how you holistically have I mean, I love it because I do a similar thing. You can't help it, but when you reach this point of of finding your place in enterprise architecture, and then, and further specialization in business architecture or whatever, which is what I've done, and how we use it for strategy and how we use it for, just making sense of the C-suite, basically. Um, the but the really enjoyed the walk through your life. I mean, all of the angles. It was such a, we are everything we've ever been, right? So
Yeah.
and I like that you recognize and knit that all together with context. So that's cool. And now I mean, I know so much about you. I love that. I wish everyone that I ever met did this for me.
I
But
was worried
anyway,
actually I was being too personal, but then I was like, we're kind of
well,
we're with each other here, and that I
yeah.
really do think that more people today, including myself, we're seeking to feel like we're complete in the sense that there's a certain authenticity that's connected between how we're spending our time and our energies. So work, I put a lot of energy in my work, so I want to feel that uh like that all of that is really a sense that I can make of everything, like that purpose, job purpose, and not BS jobs and things like that. So,
Mhm. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I appreciate it, and I feel really glad for you that you've been fortunate to be in an environment where you can now sort of blossom into all of this.
thanks.
And I met I was mentoring a young woman last week, and she opened the conversation with, I really like the work I do, but I'm feeling really unsettled, and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, I'm not sure. I thought this was my forever job, and I'm not sure it is. And I said, well, first of all, there's no such thing as a forever job, and you're not seeking a job, right? You're seeking sort of self-actualization, right? So whatever you're, this will go back old school to Maslow, but and then also never ever say again, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, because you're grown up and you're already being it. So let's just
Mhm.
acknowledge what you're being. So I think that was all, it all fits with my sort of thoughts of the week.
Yeah.
And then leaning over into the prior comment, and I didn't catch your name, but a lot of architects find ourselves in business architects, all types of architects find ourselves, and we put ourselves sometimes in a far too tactical space, far too, I'm here to build the model, I'm here to integrate this solution, I'm here to make sure that this software works in this environment. And those are all really important things, but that's only doing part of our superpower. And it is really hard, and it's very common to find yourself in that position. How we work our way up and through is something we all need to work on together, and we've talked about that quite a lot as one of our core concerns and focus areas, is mentoring and bringing people forward through guidance on being in both planes, the implementing, sort of integrating plane, as well as the strategic thinking plane, and how do we move between, because that's actually hard to do as well, and not embed our brand too much in either. But anyway, so keep listening to keep hanging in here, and we're trying to figure out ways that we can pull those who are finding themselves in too much of a tactical roll up, and those people who are being called too conceptual into more delivery, right? So we have a
Yeah,
really interesting and challenging balancing act. Right,
definitely.
those are the comments that I would have, but
That's
but I
really
appreciate
insightful.
appreciate the last hour. Yeah.
I also remembered in one of the comments for the previous remarks, but thank you so much, Linda, about oh, I wasn't in a company where that the way of working or the values or what I wanted or something. It reminds me of just when this merger was happening and the reaction of the people inside the existing company to the merger of, ooh, what if the new company isn't the values that I want or isn't the identity that goes aligned with me? And what is that going to be like? Or what am I going to do? Or what if the job that's asked of me is not where I want to be, who I want to be? I'm like, but guys, we make the values. It isn't something someone decides in the top, and they can decide something, but in the end, there's being a part of something, that the ocean's a bunch of drops, so we're the drops. So if we're here and we're also representing principles and values and approaches, then we're a part of the weight of what is made up in the company. And I find that that's true also in jobs. So there's some, when I was a junior consultant, and there's some places that I was mandated to go to, like, okay, you're going to go there and you're going to do this. And I was working for some clients who they go eat lunch, they don't invite you, they put you in a corner room with the door shut. Like that's for the consultant. And I just really cut off and I was like, well, I don't just want to execute what here's the list, the to-do list for the day. Can't I be in the scoping meeting? Can't we be talking in advance earlier on in the process so I can help counsel you with this? And so I wasn't invited in, but then I just started showing up. So I saw I open the door, I see when they leave for lunch, I stand up, I walk with them, I go with them to the canteen. And they're like, okay, they can't push me away, but then I'm just kind of there. And then I see when they're having their meetings and I knock on the door like, okay, I propose I come into this meeting. Okay. Well, kindly, respectfully. But I feel like some places it was up to me to evolve. Like, I don't like this mission, or I don't like the style here, or what's been asked of me is not really what would get the most value from our working together. So I shift it. I push it a little, but a nice pushy, a smart pushy. But I think sometimes we shouldn't accept the way things are and be again to the limits of our capacity. I mean, you can be in a company, you're like, whoa, this is not okay for me, and leave. Of course, I mean, you can't radically do things, but you can do little adjustments to try to make the job what you want it to be and make the context how you want to see it. And that's again, I think something that's really important in general to be in the world we want to be in is to be a part of making it be the world we want to be in, at least to the limits of our reach, accepting what we cannot change, but I think at least it helps me sleep better at night to feel like I'm doing as much as I can. And again, this the post merger is I'm really excited about it and I'm really positive about it because I'm generally a positive person. But I understand that it'd be a source of anxiety for people, to have this radical change. But I'm like, this is the most important time to be engaged. It's not a time to disengage and hold your breath and see what happens. We're building now. So, um, does anybody else have any feelings about the topics or what's things that are going on with you where you might be kind of asking yourself some similar questions?
I just wanted to thank you, and you're a very charismatic speaker, and
Oh,
I really appreciated how you made yourself very available through your presentation to us. I mean, you extrapolated very well, and you're very systematic in your thinking. From the beginning basically to where you got now, and it seems to me that you're very good at this and systemizing your thoughts and then getting things into action. And it is not always comfortable, as you were saying, pushing these boundaries
uh,
that you were referring now. It's something that requires, some, at least for me, it required some kind of maturity. And I'm still struggling with it to, let's say, understand where I can do it and where I can't, because very, very often the place I work with is somewhat closed, in their ways. So it's not it really, I think it really depends on the context you are. It is good to as you said, to do this kind of activity, but again, then it's waiting how much of you know effort you can make and what it gives you at the
yeah,
end.
the
Yeah,
risk you're taking. I totally
yeah,
get what you're saying about context. Um, I admit that living in the US and living in France, I'm more confident to know how to navigate culturally with people from those two regions of the world. And following our merger, for example, we're working a lot with certain regions of the world that I don't know how they operate and what they're
yeah,
thinking and how they're going to interpret my behaviors
yeah,
because I know, I really can feel and gauge myself with certain cultures, with knowing
Mhm.
that when I do a certain thing, that's what they're going to understand and interpret, and that it'll be qualitative and positive. And already, just the last 2 years, when I had specific responsibilities for the DACH region, I had to learn working with German speakers, for example, and people of this background culture, um, how to not give off the wrong messages in how I interact with human beings and how you propose new ideas and how you discuss and share and conclude things. And I think also as a
I think we
woman,
have a little guide in our company for that,
we
actually.
do. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's of different cultures. I mean, I moved recently to the Netherlands, so I read that guide for the Netherlands.
Can
Just,
I have your
you know,
guide on the Netherlands, please? I kind of need that now. I mean,
All
I
of us,
got
yeah.
Italians and I got French
yeah,
people and I got Germans, okay,
yeah.
but
I'm
I'm
from Croatia.
discovering,
I grew up in an Italian community in
okay,
there, and I went in Italy to study. So I have a little bit of everything covered.
good.
But this was an interesting experience, and again, in my work, I work with 12 different countries, and
Okay.
Egypt was, let's say, the most challenging one for now.
Wow.
The other ones still, but Egypt was, a completely different
Dynamic.
uh, dynamic. Yes, in the way how they approach work.
How they approach work,
So
but also I think that some cultures,
interactions.
women, they don't, the interaction's not the same and the positioning and the way, because I also, in my role for France, Africa, and the Middle East, when I was
Hmm.
working with certain of the countries in Africa and the Middle East, they were very kind and respectful to me, but they're like, now can I talk to someone who makes decisions and who's, important and, like
Yeah,
you're sweet, but okay. But I'm not
yeah,
generalizing an entire country. I'm just saying there's also
it
history
happens.
and cultures that are present, and I try to adjust to those, but I could totally hear where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
No, it's not. But again, it makes things interesting. So
Yeah.
I think the most difficult part for me personally is having blockers or not having clear goals or things like that. It's the most difficult part. And my path to settling with enterprise architecture was not straightforward. I worked as a consultant for many years, and I finished in this role for I'm here for 2 years, and there was no enterprise architecture in this company
Mm.
defined. Let's say everybody does it in a way, but it was not defined, and so building it in a company that has no idea what it is or how to approach it, has been quite challenging. I mean, interesting because I got to learn, a lot of new things,
Yeah.
but it is quite challenging. And you kind of really inspired me to look again at the Kigai.
Okay.
Yeah, that is, I think, something to be revised once in
Well,
a
if
while.
you have the
Your
mandate to do
values and
this,
ideas.
then I know you can. I mean, you're at
Yeah.
this place and you're at the right place at the right time, and clearly they need this. If the
Mm,
culture is not there, you're gonna develop that EA culture. Um, so it means it's even more important. I'm working for a company who provides an EA tool, so they know what EA is and they know it's
yeah.
important. So it's more about being, in French, there's an idiomatic expression that it's always the guy who repairs the shoes who has shoes in a bad state. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have
So
that too.
okay, something like that. That was my trick, is trying to say we really should be applying to ourselves all the good advice we're giving to other people. And they're like, oh, but we don't have time for that. Well, you tell your clients they always have to make time for that.
Yeah.
You make space for
That
that,
is
that that's
great.
the way you survive. So it was easier for me than it can be for so many people. EA is super hard to already help people understand and
Yeah.
help people say, like, how does that apply to how we work and what we're going to do. And so, kudos, and you can do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. You made me think, how I found things 2 years ago and where we are now. And so when you compare these points in time, it's, we did really a lot. So that's good to know, leave things better than you found them.
Yes. Yeah, and
That
sometimes
was
I
great.
think that you should every now and then take a little step back and say, what
Mm.
have we achieved so far? To be like, well, gosh darn it, we did a lot. Like, and not just look at all that is to do in front of you.
Yeah.
Because that's something I had to do when I had a meeting with the new big boss that I'd never met before, and he's our new big boss, to tell him that we needed to create this function that didn't exist in their org chart that I was doing at our company before. And I was like, we really need to do this, corporate practices. I had to prepare my slide deck, and I was putting in there the achievements from before, and I was like, we have that many gigabytes of knowledge management. I did all those workshops. We did all that. We got all these outcomes, and I was like, just looking into it to say what happened, it let me be like, well, actually, and I
Good
think that
job.
we need to do that sometimes because
Yeah.
we don't. It's
No,
not
that
spontaneously
is a good thing to do. Yeah.
for
Thank you so much,
ourselves.
Leslie.
You're
I
welcome.
will I will leave you now.
Okay,
Have a good weekend, you
thank
all.
you.
Bye bye.
Did you want to say something, Rachel, before we close out? I saw you and took off your mic.
I was just going to say about, I totally understand where Barbara is. I think, yeah, it can be quite difficult, sort of certain power within a business, and you don't feel you have the power. But I think the one thing that I was just going to say is the thing I will take away is having that capacity for action and generating change. And I think I'm in that place now where, I think I've accepted too much in my life that is just the way it is. As you said, so that is just something I'm definitely going to take away, and even if it's small actions, it's in the right direction.
I'm delighted.
So
Do it.
thank
Then
you.
come back
Thank
in
you
a
very
while and
much.
tell us what you did.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me, Dana. Maybe we should close out because we've
Yeah, I
had a
just wanted to
significant.
congratulate you as well. I loved that your presentation was so personal, honestly. I think it was amazing. So,
Thanks.
yeah, it was really nice. And then when you were talking about zero waste with your family and then sustainability in work, and then I saw Ikigai, I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense because I read the book about Ikigai as well and
Oh,
I
you
really
did.
loved it.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And I had so much I wanted to say about eco-conception. So if we do another session at some point about eco-conception, I can give more details. Because I mean, there's so much that we can be doing in our companies. And as enterprise architects, we could be, I mean, already I've noticed it inside our company, but also to our customers about how we conceive applications, how we evolve our application systems, how
Mhm.
we kind of rethink a lot of our ways of working. There's a lot of opportunity there because we're already in contact with the right people.